All right, so I'm going to leave everything there and we're going to go to this story. It's a big story that we're following this morning. You remember that this past Monday, one of the most devastating stories where 12 learners lost their lives and many were injured after a horrific and deadly road crash in Vanderbijlipark in Gauteng. Human error has been alleged to have caused the accident. The 22-year-old driver alleged to have been operating and driving with an expired public driver's permit, and he, of course, is going to be appearing in court today. Now, on the same day, 9 children were injured after the driver of their scholar transport vehicle lost control and crashed into a tree near Sarnia Primary School in Pinetown. This was in west of Durban. So this morning, to highlight this, the Department of Transport recently embarked on a back-to-school campaign with specific focus on scholar transport, taking a decision to embark on an unannounced law enforcement blitz in schools to conduct scholar transport inspections. And that is where Sakina is this morning at the Blitz. Sakina, where are you? No, I don't know. I don't think you can tell us exactly where you are, but just talk to us about what's going down.
Well, good morning, Leanne, and you're absolutely correct in what you have described. And this blitz this morning is taking place against a backdrop of anger, against a backdrop of great sadness for the learners who lost their lives. And as you pointed out, on that very day when 12 young learners lost their life, there was another scholar transport accident in KZN that left 9 learners injured. Well, we are in Lenasia this morning, and this is, of course, the Department of Transport, along with other law enforcement agencies here in Gauteng, conducting a blitz. And this is, of course, about accountability, about ensuring that we don't have another day, another incident where parents send their children to school and those children, unfortunately, don't make it back home. And I'm joined right now by Minister Barbara Creecy. Minister, good morning. And as I was saying, you know, this is a terrible backdrop against which we are meeting here today at what could be described as an interchange here in Lenasia. But please just explain to us the importance and, of course, the objective of this particular blitz.
Good morning, Sakina, and of course greetings to all your viewers. And let me start off by expressing my profound condolences to the families and friends of the children who lost their lives in that terrible accident earlier this week. What we are doing this morning is we are having a blitz on scholar transport in Lenasia. Following that terrible accident, we convened a meeting of all MECs across the country to develop a program of further enforcement activities that target specifically private scholar transport. You would know last week and the week before we were very busy checking all the buses that are procured by the Department of Education across the country. But these private scholar transport vehicles are procured by parents, not by the Department of Education. I think we know that they're called Malome, and of course many of these vehicles are not roadworthy. The drivers are not licensed to carry passengers. So there's a requirement in the law that they have to have what's called a PDP, a public driver's license permit. And of course the vehicles have to be roadworthy and have to be permitted. And we're finding that these aspects of the law are not being complied with, and we need greater enforcement. But of course, we are very concerned, as you know, about the issue of driver behavior. And already the preliminary investigation into that terrible accident on Monday is indicating that once again, unfortunately, driver behavior was involved in this accident. And there is a section 42.2 of the National Road Traffic Management Act that enables me as the minister to regulate that those who are involved in the transportation of scholars need to go on an advanced driving course, and I think that is very much required. We also intend to, through this regulation, introduce a system in which vehicles that private vehicles that are involved in scholar transport have to be marked. This is a school transport vehicle, and of course there also has to be a relationship between the school and these vehicles, because the school is the primary point of contact with these vehicles.
Minister, as we're standing here, just behind us, the blue vehicle that has just been driven up. We saw earlier when we met at the police station here in Lenasia, there was a red vehicle, similar Toyota Hi-Ace, that was impounded. And if you looked at the condition of that vehicle, it literally is, as we usually say, a coffin on wheels. The steering wheel racket was loose. The seats were not bolted. All of those things were happening, Minister, if we can just maybe walk to take a closer look at this particular vehicle. But this is a vehicle that has been transporting learners, who knows for how long, until it was impounded. So just in terms of the oversight, who ultimately takes responsibility and accountability for this situation where children are being ferried to school in private vehicles?
Look, I think that in the end, the buck stops with me. And that's why we've brought out the national traffic officers to conduct this blitz. But of course, we are not the only enforcement agency. There are provincial and also municipal traffic officers. After this exercise later on today, I do have a meeting with the MEC of Transport in Gauteng and also with the MEC of Education. I want to understand how going forward they are going to assist us. As you know, Sakina, I used to be the MEC of Education in Gauteng, and at that time we insisted that there was a relationship between the school and the transport vehicle, so that the school, in a sense, could satisfy itself that its learners were safe. What I want to understand is, how does the system operate today and how can we tighten up? Because as you say, it's unconscionable that the kind of vehicle that we saw at the Lens police station this morning can actually be transporting children.
And yet this is what is happening. So what we see here, if you can just follow the visuals that Kwazi is showing you now, you have children who obviously were picked up at their homes. And then they come to this point. It's on the corner of Nirvana and Abu Bakr in Lenasia. And this is an exchange, so to speak, where the learners from wherever they were picked up in Soweto then come to the central point, and the taxi drivers then engage in some form of exchange, as it were, where learners going to different schools then move from one vehicle to another. And one doesn't know how much the parents know of what actually takes place here, but Umalume who picked your child up this morning isn't necessarily the same Malume who drops your child off at the school, Minister.
And I think that that's why I need to meet with the Department of Education. Obviously, my role relates to the condition of the vehicles and the driver behavior. But as a mother, I'm concerned about what I'm seeing here. Earlier we saw learners just wandering up and down across these major roads unsupervised. So I do need to understand if this is a recognized transport interchange, how is it supervised, how does it operate? But let me say that to parents who are concerned about their children and the conditions of the vehicles that their children might be entering into. First of all, it is already a requirement that anybody who transports your child must have what we call a PDP, a public driver permit. Now, if you and I have a driving license which we renew every 5 years, but a PDP has to be reviewed every 2 years. And that obviously is very important because it means that if there are infringements or if there's a deterioration in eyesight of the driver or any other physical condition, that driver would be denied such a permit. Secondly, somebody who has a PDP that is transporting passengers must be at least 21 years old, not 18 years old. And the vehicle itself must be permitted for public transport. And we're looking now at a vehicle that doesn't appear to be in a roadworthy condition. I haven't had an opportunity yet to get a briefing from the officers. But of course, this kind of vehicle is enormously dangerous because what is clear from this vehicle is that there are no seat belts. The interior of the vehicle doesn't have covers. So it means that even if there's a minor accident, children are going to get flung all over this vehicle. They're going to get injured on the metal that is sticking out from the side of the vehicle. So these are the kind of enforcement operations that we want to take responsibility for as transport. But we're also calling on schools and parents to help us with oversight. The Gauteng Department of Transport has a helpline, because one of the stories we heard with regard to the driver on Monday was that he was known to be reckless. So that helpline is available. I'm sure it's something that you can get from the Gauteng department. And we want parents, teachers, and other members of the public who are worried about driver behavior to be notifying that hotline.
Minister, I'll tell you, we'll speak a little bit more because we're seeing this vehicle. We understand on the other side, one vehicle has also been impounded. So we're going to go around and we'll speak to some of the other people here, part of this Blitz, and of course enforcement, as we can see learners in these vehicles. And we're going to try and get a better understanding of exactly where they're going, where these learners, are being transported to, but also whether the permits are valid. Kwasi, on this particular vehicle, I see there is a learner transport permit, but is it valid? Is it something that has been renewed, as the minister was just pointing out? So all of these things is, of course, what we are going to be looking at, and also looking at some of the other law enforcement agencies here.
So you can see that this is a registered and identified vehicle, which is what we want. Of course, what we need, this is what we're urging parents to check, that vehicles that are transporting their children are registered like this, certified like this. Of course, we're still at a point where we have to look into the roadworthiness of this particular vehicle. I don't want to comment on that, excuse me, at this stage. But obviously, what we're also saying to parents is it's very important that they need to be checking that the driver has this public transport permit, what we call the PDP. And it's a normal, it looks like a normal driving license, but it actually says on it PDP, and it must say PDP-P, which means they're certified to carry passengers, not PDP-G, which means they're certified to drive a truck.
All right. Minister Barbara Creecy, the Minister of Transport, with us this morning. And of course, we will come back. We'll look at some of those impounded vehicles. Yesterday in Polokwane, a vehicle was impounded and a driver arrested because of overcrowding. 22 learners in that particular vehicle. So when we come back, we'll show you a little bit more about what's happening at this interchange in Lenasia. It's back to you, Leanne.
All right, thanks so much, Sakina. Just that's where a lot of our crossings will come from this morning, where Sakina is looking at the roadworthiness of these scholar transport vehicles. And just from what we are seeing, just through these exceptional visuals, it's shocking that we can actually put our children into vehicles like that. And I hope something is done urgently.